Thank you for joining me here today. First off, I wanted to give you just a quick update on our Bridge Grant program. This was the new program that will provide $5,000 in direct financial support for Manitoba businesses, and not just Manitoba businesses, but also organizations like community groups, non-profits, charities, churches, that type of organization that have been forced to close as a result of our new and very necessary public health orders. Just yesterday, I announced that this program was now open, and I can tell you we have over 2,200 applicants not even a day later. So the need is real, and I want to thank those businesses that applied and encourage those organizations that have not yet done so to please do. The idea here, of course, is not to make up for your losses. We can't do that. Nobody can do that. But what we can do is give you a bridge through so that as we continue to fight COVID together and we continue to work towards the flattening of that curve and bringing it down, you're going to be able to land squarely and start and accelerate back into business at the appropriate time in a safe way. For more information and to apply, visit manitoba.ca/COVID-19, click on Programs, and then click on Manitoba Bridge Grant. Our number one priority in the face of this unprecedented pandemic has been to protect our most vulnerable Manitobans and ensure our healthcare system is there for all Manitobans when they need it. And the vast majority of Manitobans are doing what Dr. Brent Roussin and his team have ordered. And I thank again Dr. Roussin and Lynette Siragusa for being our team leaders through this time. Most Manitobans are following the fundamentals, and that is really important. And I say again, thanks to Manitobans that are doing that. Thank you for doing it, and thank you for continuing to do it, even though I know it's hard, and you know it's hard too. This isn't an easy time for anybody, and I just want to say to you, thanks so much for continuing to do the right things to keep yourself safe and to keep others safe. There are a small minority of people who are not doing their part. They are ignoring the advice of our public health experts, and in doing so, they are putting their health and the health of others at risk. And the current surge of COVID-19 cases is very concerning. Obviously, it is causing significant strain, as Brent and Lynette have outlined in their regular media availabilities to Manitobans, significant strain on our healthcare system, both in Winnipeg but throughout rural Manitoba as well. And that is why, under the direction of Dr. Roussin and our health system leaders, all of Manitoba is now listed as critical or red on the pandemic response system. And this is to help us get back on the right track and halt the spread of this deadly virus. And I believe we can do that. But we will need everybody on the team. To make these measures work, we need the cooperation and we need the commitment of all Manitobans. We need everybody on Team Manitoba. We're continuing to enhance and strengthen our enforcement efforts to make sure that those who are not yet interested in being on Team Manitoba make the right decision to join. And so there are going to be consequences, as there have been, increasingly, for those who disregard public health orders and in so doing put themselves and put others in danger. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. Nous continuons d'améliorer et de renforcer nos efforts d'application de la loi. Nous voulons nous assurer qu'il y aura des conséquences pour ceux qui ne respectent pas les règles de santé publique et mettent les autres en danger. Less than 2 weeks ago, we announced the $2.5 million Municipal Enforcement Support Program to provide additional training and resources for our enforcement partners. And here I'm talking, of course, about the City of Winnipeg and our City of Brandon, various cities around the province, our rural municipalities, and so on. To have everybody on the team helping to halt the spread of this deadly virus at this critical time is of great importance to us. So I wanted to let you know that since then, a total of 46 communities have applied to the first intake of that program. We have an additional 91 bylaw officers that are being deployed to enforcement efforts, and more to come. And I want to say thanks to those who've taken up this challenge at the municipal level, have led this transitional challenge. Thank you to you for doing that. We have to be adaptable. We have to work as a team. We have to respond. We are a team. And defense doesn't work if everyone isn't playing defense. The goalie looks pretty bad if the forwards don't back check. So we need you to do your part and make sure at the local level you're doing this. So I wanted to say, for those who have yet to take advantage of this funding support, please do consider it. The application intake period will be extended to expand the reach of this program further to other communities across our province. To those communities, even LaBroquerie, I would say take advantage of the program and use it to assist in saving lives in your area. It's important that you do that. Today, I am also going to let you know about an additional measure that builds further on this program. Your government signed a contract with G4S Security to help protect Manitobans to further boost enforcement efforts. Once fully operational, we anticipate that G4S will provide 90 additional security personnel to bolster the complement of provincial employees and municipal in some cases as well, who are enforcing public health orders. Specialized training through Commissioners Manitoba is underway for G4S personnel along with provincial employees. And I should mention the G4S personnel are already trained individuals, but the specialized training is, of course, to enhance their knowledge, their depth of knowledge about the processes we'll use to enforce health orders. Additional provincial personnel are being redeployed as well, and I should mention and thank our provincial government employees for their willingness as well to be adaptable in moving their responsibilities over to more focused efforts in respect of protecting Manitobans against the effects of COVID. Over the weekend, the Manitoba government deployed a team of provincial employees province-wide, and they were dedicated to enforcing public health orders. That team had more than 225 interactions with a wide variety of businesses, organizations, and individuals. In all, 32 tickets were issued across Manitoba last week. That's almost triple the previous week. And I'd like to thank everyone on the team who is working hard to stop those who are disregarding public health measures aimed at keeping Manitobans safe. And I'd also like to add my thanks to those Manitobans who have been part of the team by calling in the tip line, and say thanks to you as well. It's a team effort. I want to thank our enforcement partners for their willingness to step up and assist Team Manitoba and help us to do everything we can to halt the spread of this virus and protect our most vulnerable Manitobans. We're all in this together, as Dr. Roussin has said many times, and our enforcement people are doing their job, but we all need to do our job so they don't need to be enforcement people. Saturday was a tough day for anybody who cares about the health and safety of all Manitobans, as we all do, I hope. There was a rally in Steinbach, and the problem with that rally was that it put public health at risk. Everyone who attended, everyone who came in contact with people there and who will come into contact with people thereafter elevated the risks of the transmission of COVID because they disobeyed, many of them, disobeyed the public health rules. I want to emphasize that peaceful protest in a democracy is a fundamental right. And I have respected the rights of protesters my entire life, and I've been a protester. And this is not about our opposition to protest. This is about our opposition to those who would disrespect public health orders. Let's be clear about that. There have been protests in front of my house, and I've defended the rights of people to protest peacefully and respectfully, even then. So I want it absolutely clear that we are not, as a government, and I am not, as your Premier, expressing in any way disrespect for the fundamental freedoms people must enjoy, and one of those is the right to protest if they feel it is appropriate. I am asking, and I will insist through enforcement, that people respect one another by obeying public health orders, and that is the issue. In short, the rally was dangerous in the way it was conducted. The rally was disrespectful in the way it was conducted. And in conclusion, Manitobans need to know that charges are being filed and fines are being issued as we speak to those who demonstrated that disrespect. You do not have to believe in COVID. COVID already believes in you, and it's proving itself time and time and time again. It kills people. We're at a crucial point in our fight against COVID-19. We all need to work together. We need to work together, not against one another. And I implore all Manitobans to get on the team and to be part of finding solutions rather than simply placing blame, pointing fingers, launching accusations, or frankly, disrespecting blatantly the rules that Dr. Roussin has put into place and that I am responsible and my government is responsible for enforcing. We are doing our best to work together. I think most Manitobans know that and they are on the team, but I ask all Manitobans to join this team. And I would remind again Manitobans who see something to say something, report it to our tip line. If you see a business breaking public health rules, I want you to report it. If you see someone hosting a large gathering or a house party that's violating the rules, you can report that, please do. If you suspect that someone is not quarantining when they are supposed to be quarantining, report that as well. You can contact the tip line to voice concerns. You can share information by calling 204-945-3744 or toll free 1-866-626-4862. You can press option 3 on the call menu when you call. You can also go online to www.manitoba.ca/COVID-19 and complete the reporting form. Thank you for your cooperation and thank you for your help. We're all facing some tough challenges. We're stronger when we work together as a team. I believe with the cooperation and the assistance of all Manitobans, we can and we will get back to beating COVID the way we have in the past. We've all been impacted by COVID-19, some more than others, and we recognize the significant personal and professional sacrifices all Manitobans have made in the face of this pandemic in order to protect themselves, their loved ones, their community, and to continue providing important services on the front lines of our government services to those who need them. These next few weeks will not be easy. There is no easy here. But I am confident that if we work together, we can get back to beating COVID-19, and that's something to look forward to. The best thing we can do for our businesses, for our healthcare system, for our schools, for our vulnerable communities, for one another, is to bend our COVID curve. And when I say bend our COVID curve, I want to be clear, I mean down. We did it once, we can do it again. When we were abiding by the fundamentals, we were beating COVID. And some of us lost our way. Now COVID is beating us, and we need to get back to beating COVID. And we do that by getting back to the fundamentals. Lorsque nous respections les fondamentaux, nous battons COVID. Alors certains d'entre nous ont perdu notre chemin, et maintenant COVID nous bat. Nous devons revenir aux fondamentaux et aplatir notre curve COVID maintenant. It's crucial that we all follow the fundamentals. Stay home. Only leave home for essential purposes. Stay home when you're sick. Stay home if any member of your family is sick. Wash your hands. Practice good hygiene. Cover your cough. Practice physical distancing. Wear a mask. And limit your close contacts by 75%. Thank you. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. A reminder to our reporters on the line, you will have one preliminary and one follow-up question. Up first this morning from CTV News, Jeff.
Hi, Mr. Premier. Sorry about that. My voice is cracking. Could I just get you to clarify one of the last things you said about, and you talked about it yesterday too, about the charges are being filed and fines are being issued from that rally. Is this going to be the practice going forward? We're already hearing about another rally coming up, maybe at the legislature. Is this going to be the practice going forward if there's these large events, and you can tie license plates to it, that people will be fined in this matter?
I don't want to say too much, Jeff, except about enforcement, because it can have the effect of making the enforcement less effective. The more I speak about it, you understand the danger of that. I only want to assure all Manitobans that enforcement efforts are being stepped up, that we've added enforcement officials, that we are training them and making sure that they're going to be deployed in an appropriate way, and that the consequences of not abiding by health orders are going to be felt by people in the pocketbook.
Okay, my follow-up is unrelated. Is your government taking any consideration to extending Christmas break for students?
Yes.
From City News, Mark.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. Just looking for maybe to expand on the motivation to bring G4S on board as opposed to using the RCMP or police. Just thoughts there?
Yeah, no, thanks, Mark. These are, we did an request for, or an RFQ, a request for quotation from a variety of companies. This is a company that responded that has satisfied the criteria for selection. I should emphasize this isn't a sole source contract, just be clear. But it is a company that has done ticketing. In fact, they've been employed by the City of Winnipeg to do ticketing. So it's a company that has people who are used to dealing with situations where, let's just say it's not always pleasant, put it that way, as opposed to a lot of our government employees that are don't have that experience personally. You know, they've been inspecting things, but not necessarily in a confrontational manner. So I just say this is a group that can bolster our enforcement because they bring that experience with them, and they'll be trained up to do give us additional assistance to make sure that they're able to, of course, add that level of enforcement that we need now.
Thank you. You had talked about a curfew, exploring that idea, giving people a chance to weigh in. I'm wondering if that's still something you're thinking about doing, and maybe at what point you would put a curfew into effect if we see numbers continuing in the wrong direction.
Oh, my reluctance, I said this, of course, when we made the decision not to proceed with a curfew. It does catch a lot of people and restrict a lot of people who aren't the problem. Nonetheless, it has to remain on the table because we have to see the COVID cases at the level that they were at, although the average is coming down slightly. It's too early to run any kind of victory lap here. And we have to see the numbers come down. And if we fail to adhere to the rules and the numbers continue to escalate, both Lynette Siragusa and Dr. Roussin have outlined that that's not sustainable and endangers the services that we all count on. So we're going to have to look at additional measures if we don't see those numbers start to come down. We're all hopeful they will, but it depends on everybody being on the team. And so that's what today's announcement's about.
From CHVN, Taylor.
Hi, good morning. When will the G4S staff be in Manitoba?
Just about now. The orientation and training program, I understand, is just underway. It's going to mean that we're going to have bolstered enforcement in the coming weekend, for example.
Sorry, I said where.
Tell you where, just because that doesn't help with enforcement. You understand that? That'd be like me telling you exactly where all the police are going to be so that you can avoid, so you can speed in the areas they aren't. I'm not going to tell you where they're going to be deployed for obvious reasons, Taylor.
And what impact has COVID-19 enforcement had on other provincial officers and inspectors who are doing this act?
Oh, you know, I mean, this weekend was rough. We know there was a get-together that where people behaved badly. Let's put it that way. You know, coughing on officers, verbal slurs, racist slurs. This is not Steinbach. I want to make the point today, and to all Manitobans, don't judge Steinbach or that region by the conduct of a few miscreant people. This is a beautiful community with awesome people, so supportive, so giving. This is not a behavior that's descriptive of the community of Steinbach. Be very careful not to make the presupposition that that community is anything but a supportive and wonderful community with great people. Please don't do that. But the behavior of some of the people that were at that event this weekend was totally unacceptable. not an indication of the quality of the fine people of that area.
From the Winnipeg Free Press, Larry.
Premier, I can appreciate the need for stepped-up enforcement of the rules, but I'd like to get back to the rules themselves. Under the current public health orders, I can have 5 people from 5 different households to my home tonight. I can have 5 still different people from 5 still other households to my home tomorrow night, et cetera, et cetera. Is the government reconsidering this rule to limit contacts between households?
Important consideration. And I want to clarify again, and we've received some criticism from writers in your paper, columnists and so on, about the way in which we've made decisions and so on. I want to be really clear. I'm responsible for every decision, but I do act on the advice of my senior health people. So I guess I would use the analogy, maybe it's oversimplifying it, but I'm Paul Maurice and Dr. Brent Russen's Connor Helbuck. I mean, he's between the pipes. He's the guy on the ice. He has the health expertise that we count on. I'm responsible for the decisions that are made. So I'm happy to take the blame if you don't like the way things are being communicated, and I will be willing to do that on an ongoing basis, as I have been. This is about, though, consistency in the application and development of rules. And so from that standpoint, we will always act on the recommendations that Dr. Russen gives us. So there's the long answer to your question, Larry. Of course, many issues in this unprecedented pandemic have to be addressed. I would argue there are probably thousands of them. And some of them, like this gathering size issue, are a point of debate and discussion between health experts and myself and others. But we'll make announcements when we know that we have a team that endorses those on the basis of science and fact. And that's how we'll continue to act as we have throughout this pandemic.
I guess what confuses me is that on innumerable occasions, Dr. Brent Russen has made his views crystal clear to Manitobans. Don't have people over, stay home. So I guess I'd ask again, Premier, you know where he stands, because he's been telling the public this all along. But yet the rules which are set by you and your health minister don't reflect that. Will you consider banning unnecessary visits to individual homes?
Larry, what you're trying to do there is draw some light between Dr. Russen and I, and I'll tell you, Dr. Russen and I are on the same team. I'm not sure where your paper is and what you're after, but I can tell you this. We're going to continue to consult with one another. Dr. Russen's always said that there's a difference between healthcare rules that are enforceable and his directives. And he's always said that he would hope Manitobans would abide by the spirit of the directives. That's what we hope too. And so we'll continue to review things together, but what you just did in your preamble was you tried to say that the government's stopping Dr. Russen from getting his way, and that's patently false.
From Global, Brittany.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. It's Brittany from Global News. Back to the rally in Steinbach on the weekend, justice officials, along with others, were taking pictures and videos of license plates, and you said yesterday that was how you were looking at sending out some of these fines. Is there any concern of it not being the registered owner of the car that was necessarily there and that these could face court challenges?
My concern wouldn't be court challenges on the basis of the tickets being invalid. My concern would be that the tickets aren't issued in the first place, Brittany. I think we have to have deterrence to behavior like last weekend. You know, we give out tickets now for things like photo radar without knowing for sure who the driver is based on the license identification. I'm not going to get into the legal aspects of this except to say I believe Manitobans want to see deterrence to the kind of behavior they saw on the weekend, and we're going to make sure those deterrents exist.
Thank you. And you have said that RCMP and police are able to hand out tickets on top of, you know, these health inspectors and everybody else that you guys have brought on board, but RCMP didn't issue any tickets at this rally. Is there any concern there that you're having to rely on some people that simply aren't willing to hand out tickets?
Well, I don't wish to criticize the RCMP here. The RCMP were engaged in some necessary functions of their duties on the weekend in respect of a very significant crowd, and the dangers posed by that crowd to one another and to those around them were real. They were I think, doing their job. So I'm not going to be critical of the RCMP. There were many other officials, as I just outlined, there as well. I think there was a risk that they might have escalated the situation, but I'm not the judge on how enforcement officials act in these situations. I am making sure that we have enforcement officials, and I'm making sure that the public knows that we are taking this seriously and following up on the evidence we gather, whether it's immediately on site or whether it's thereafter. The consequences are going to be felt by those who break public health rules.
From the Brandon Sun, Drew.
Thank you. Mr. Premier, on the personnel from G4S, are they going to be just deployed in Winnipeg, or will they also be in Brandon and other parts of the province?
I'm not going to tell you that for previously mentioned reasons. The better job of deterring behavior is what we're after. We're all trying to make sure, well, most of us are trying to make sure that we help each other get through this. And so I'm not going to say anything in respect of where the photo radar unit's going to be located to help you drive faster somewhere else. And yeah, I hope you understand why.
Okay. Just to follow up on some of your comments yesterday, you were saying that Minister Eichler was in consultation with businesses, possibly on limiting what they can sell. Do you have any more details on that? And when might we hear more about that?
Yes, I have more details, and tomorrow I will be able to tell you more.
From CJOB, Joe.
Hi there, Mr. Premier. The numbers have been high for several weeks now. Did you anticipate having to crack down or ramp up enforcement at this point in the game?
I can only tell you, Joe, I think it's more important than ever, and it's obvious from the ramped up numbers. We have to do more, and I've said this repeatedly, we have to do more to deter oddball behavior, unacceptable behavior that endangers us and endangers one another, and that's exactly what we're doing. That's what I'm sharing with you today.
And you said we could potentially be looking at additional measures if this doesn't work. What would that be? Would it be a curfew, or do you have something else in line?
Yeah, clearly we've got other measures that are in discussion. Larry referred in his preamble to one aspect of this that needs to be, continuously discussed. Clarity around communications. I want to defend that because there was quite a bit of harsh criticism coming to Doc Roussin and our government too last week about confusion. There's a difference between the rules and directives. I think most Manitobans understand that. Much was made of that. The rules have to be enforceable, and it's difficult to do that when you have many Manitobans. For example, if you say nobody can have anybody outside their household in their house, we could start making a list of all the people that would be affected adversely by that rule. What about people who need childcare in their house? What about people who need help, people that are dealing with a disability? What about, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very difficult to enforce a rule and then that has dozens, if not thousands, of exceptions. I think that's where Dr. Roussin has been, our advice from Dr. Roussin has been, and we've acted on it, not to make this a rule because it wouldn't be enforceable, right? That being said, there are people who use that it's only a directive thing as an excuse to then do stupid things like Larry Cush from the Free Press just outlined. I'm going to have 5 people over every night from different places all over the community and hope I can spread COVID is not a good idea. So the spirit of the rules is what we need everybody to abide by, and that is the directive Dr. Roussin has made eminently clear time and time again. I'll give you an example of where you get people abusing this. You heard one last week, was a hockey team going out of the city to practice because they thought they could, use the rules to their advantage. That's not abiding by the spirit of the rules. And I raised that reluctantly because the team and their management apologized for doing it, and I accept their apology, and I thank them for their apology. But then I hear yesterday about a swim team going to Kenora to have a practice. Guys, get on the team. How do you think that makes the people in Kenora feel when they see that happen? You think they feel like you're respecting their health and well-being when you go and do something like that? Of course they don't. So playing on the edges of the rules reminds me of my old basketball coach, Jerry Hemmings, over in Brandon. One of our guys was cheating on a drill, cutting a corner around the pylon the wrong way or something on a running drill. And he stopped the drill and he looks at everybody and he says, Fellas, if you spend too much time learning the tricks of the trade, you ain't never going to learn the trade. Well, this is not a sport. This is life and death we're talking about. For heaven's sakes, stop playing the edges of the game here. Stop gaming the system. Do what Dr. Roussin is recommending. Do that and be sure that you help bend the COVID curve down. That's how we do this together. And we have to do this together.
From the Winnipeg Sun, Josh.
Good morning, Premier. This is Josh Aldridge with the Winnipeg Sun. You've talked a little bit about the rally on Saturday. What we're hearing is the same group that organized that one is going to be at Costco on Regent on Saturday. Is there anything the province can do to prevent this group from continuing to gather in this form? And you talked about enforcement. Is there anything that can be stepped up in that way to kind of prevent these types of gatherings?
Well, it's a question of defining the gathering. You can't prevent people from gathering if they're social distancing outside with proper spacing. I don't know how we're going to be able to do that, Josh, to be fair. But I do know that tickets are going to be issued as a consequence of last weekend, that the deterrent will be felt by some of those people who were at that event because they were disrespecting public health rules. And I do know that enforcement will be very likely made available for such an event should it occur in the future.
Okay. I've looked at stats, as I'm sure you're aware, over the past number of weeks, and there's always a much larger number of warnings that are handed out than actual fines and tickets handed out. And looking at numbers from the RCMP today, same kind of situation where I think they had 4 or 5 times as many warnings as tickets they wrote. Not looking for you to criticize the RCMP, but I was wondering if you could clarify for people when people are potentially going to get a warning, when people are going to get a fine, what kind of training is involved in making that kind of determination, so that if we are ramping up enforcement, when are we actually going to see those tickets kind of go a lot higher, especially when we look at the number of calls coming in? Where do we draw the line between a warning and a fine?
Josh, I think this gets into a little bit about how's the ref, and let's look at how the ref's reffing, and then let's comment on how the ref's interpreting the rules and all that stuff. I don't think that's helpful right now. I think we're all on the team right now, the same team, and the enforcement guys have a tough job. I wouldn't take warnings as a bad thing. The more warnings we can get out, the better, and the more fines, I think, if people are violating the rules. But what we are also running into is a lot of people who are phoning in false tips, which is really too bad. And we find that a lot of people are in compliance as well. Actually, the best outcome we could hope for is that everybody gets on the team and there are no fines. So it's a tricky thing, Josh, and you're raising a fair point. But we have triple the number of fines this week as we did last. That's an indication that there's more enforcement going on, but it's sadly also an indication there's still people out there that need to get that enforcement to get the message. A little bit thick, I guess. So the reality is we have to continue to do the best we can to deter and stop this kind of behavior from happening. That's the larger goal. So I don't think I want to get into the weeds on criticizing how our officials are doing their job. Rather, we've beefed up the number and we're strengthening with the training and the efforts we're making the fine capacity. We just wish that people get on the team so it didn't have to be this way, right? All of us hope that.
From CBC Radio Canada, Laïsa.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier Ministre. I want to know the contract with G4S Canada. How much is it? What is the cost for the provincial government, and how long is that going to last?
I can get you the details of the contract, Lisa. I am not 100% sure of the duration, and I'm not sure if it could even be spelled out because it's clearly going to be a function of the need for deterrent and enforcement behavior. Enforcement of aberrant behavior. So I think I could get you the copy of the contract. I think we can release that, but I doubt that it stipulates a time frame.
And also, right now, how many provincial officials do we have working on the enforcement?
Hundreds. We can give you the detailed list. It's in many, many categories, and we've also redeployed more recently even additional people who have other responsibilities to assist. I think several hundred.
From CBC Manitoba, Bart.
Mr. Premier, you just said you want Manitobans to abide by the spirit of the rule. You don't have a household-only rule. You and Dr. Roussin offer advice, and it's very clear by now some Manitobans aren't following advice. Hospitals are on the brink now. When are you going to get serious about this?
Well, we are serious about it, and we have been. We do have now the most stringent, and have had for some time, the most stringent restrictions in the country, frankly, more stringent than many aspects of the Quebec rules. So I think that would be evidence of our seriousness in respect of this.
All right. You mentioned fines and charges. Tell me what charges are Steinbach protesters facing? Not just the fines that are going to be sent in the mail, but the charges.
That would be up to the enforcement officials, RCMP, others.
From the Canadian Press, Steve.
Premier, British Columbia has a health order that spells out very clearly a household-only rule and allows for several exemptions for those receiving any government programs, any health services, social services, childcare, and even allows for 2 non-household members total to come for occasional visits. So why has the province, if it's clearly doable to make an order that specific and that clear, why has the province of Manitoba not followed suit?
Every province has taken somewhat different approaches. That's an approach that BC's taken you and I might like. Dr. Roussin's aware of it, and Dr. Roussin will make recommendations to us on the basis of his experience and expertise, which we will act upon. That being said, BC is not acting on numerous other aspects of the public health rules and restrictions that we have implemented here. So your question's fine. I mean, it implies that we're not stringent enough on that one aspect of our rules and restrictions. However, on dozens of other categories, we're much more restrictive than British Columbia is.
And I want to get back to Jeff's question on schools possibly starting their Christmas break early. Are you looking at it? How soon might schools break? And parents need a heads up if they've got to make arrangements.
Yeah, absolutely. And our education minister is clearly going to be the one who will make announcements about education issues. But I will say that, and I said to Jeff earlier, Steve, that those are issues that are under consideration, and I'm not trying to imply decisions at this point. There's a lot of consultation that's got to be involved, and I agree with your observation that advance notice would be helpful, even though it won't help with, I expect, vacation planning for anybody.
From CTV National, Jill.
Good morning, Premier. Yesterday, Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller was asked about implementing the Emergency Measures Act, and he spoke specifically about Manitoba, saying in respect to the second wave, mistakes have been made here. He was speaking about Indigenous communities specifically. What's your response to that the feds think Manitoba hasn't stepped up?
My response would be that there are people who reveal themselves during stressful times by blaming others, and I'll leave it at that.
Following that, there is more chatter now about implementing the Emergency Measures Act. What is your response to to that potentially the federal government stepping in, overstepping the provinces, and getting COVID under control?
My response would be that every province is doing its absolute best given the resources that it has, and that it would be absolutely critical that the federal government step up and assume its rightful responsibilities in terms of funding health care, for example, nationally. This is the lowest level of federal support for health care we've ever seen in the history of the country, and it's an issue that needs to be addressed. And I thank the Prime Minister for agreeing finally to have a meeting with the Premiers in early December on that issue. On other issues in respect of Indigenous communities, you fully understand that the first obligation of the federal government is to support our Indigenous communities across the country. We've offered our support consistently here. as a partner in doing that. I've raised this issue and issues around Indigenous protections with the Prime Minister as recently as last Thursday, and on a regular basis our government has offered consistent support to our Indigenous leadership and Indigenous communities to help in every way we possibly could. And we have yet to blame the federal government for the lack of support in any number of categories, despite the fact that we could.
From the Winnipeg Free Press, Tom.
Good morning. Has your government been in communication with the federal government or the Canadian military directly on what resources are available to Manitoba from the military should they be required? And if so, what types of resources are available and where could they be deployed?
Yes, Tom, we've had some discussion. I have with the Prime Minister, and I can't right off the top chronicle how many of my ministers have had discussion with their federal counterparts in respect of resources. I won't specifically subcategorize on military resources, but resource availability. And so we understand there's some expertise available through the military for in a variety of ways. In the context of OCN, for example, I expect the federal government might be considering making available some military resources to assist OCN with that outbreak there. So there are a variety of resources, I guess I'd put it that way in answer to your question.
Looking at hospitals that are now on the brink, ICUs are well above their normal capacity. If hospitals move into phase 3 of the expansion plan and they don't have enough qualified physicians and nursing staff, those, with the appropriate scope of practice to care for critically ill patients, what's the contingency plan here?
That's a Dr. Roussin question, you know that, and we'll continue to count on the best advice we can get from him and act on it.
Our final reporter, Mr. Premier, from CBC National, Cameron.
Good morning, Premier. Can you, just to kind of get more detail here on G4S, there's big differences in what a security officer can do and what a peace officer can do and what a bylaw officer can do by definition. What will the G4S personnel be doing in the field? What are we actually asking them to do?
Well, again, they'll be able to offer deterrence by way of ticketing and other measures, which we sincerely hope will affect the behaviors or prevent the behaviors that we have seen too frequently in regard to public health orders.
And will they be doing that as static as patrols, or would that be someone is sent out after someone calls the tip line? What's the mechanism here?
Both those and others as well. And again, the less I outline their presence and where it will be and how they will act and what they will do, the more effective I think their addition to our already hundreds of people force are going to be. But I certainly would again say that the ideal thing here would be, frankly, that Manitobans get back to the fundamentals, as 99% of Manitobans have done, but we do have a problem with some people, and we need to address that problem, and we are. I want to wind this up, if I could, on a personal note, by just offering congratulations to Morgan Tisbury, who is my niece, who has just given birth to baby girl, Rain Pally, and we are pleased to have an addition to the family. I know everybody's sending out to Red Deer the very best to Morgan. All the best, Morgan. We love you.